Here's a sneak peek from today's episode.
And for me, it was eye-opening on a number of fronts. First of all, really understanding your customer on a personal level, and then spinning that out in a way that says, we're listening to you and we understand the emotional need that a coffee company or a brand of any type can serve. And we want you to be a part of telling our story, of being storytellers with us versus us telling you what your story is.
Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Ben. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hello. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You bet. It's always fun when you get two Bens in a room, so I'm excited for the conversation. It's going to be fun, and I think that there's a lot of really cool insights that you have and a great background. So Ben, just to kick it off, let's get to know you. Let's get to know your background. And then we always love to ask, what do you love about content and marketing?
Yeah, the Ben Squared thing will not be confusing at all.
Exactly.
So I guess a little bit of my background. I've been working for, I think it's almost 18 years in the marketing space. I have had the pleasure of working across multiple industries. I worked in banking, advertising, consumer packaged goods, and now entertainment. I've worked in entertainment for about 7 years. I've kind of had also the pleasure of touching almost every single vertical. So I've worked in music, film, television, publishing, and now podcasting. So yeah, a lot of exposure to content marketing on that front. But even kind of going back to my earlier years, I worked with Starbucks and Campbell's and a number of major brands. Always brought kind of a content marketing and entertainment lens to the work that I've done there. So it's kind of been a nice, I don't want to say full circle moment, but to actually now be in the industry and being able to kind of contribute to an industry that I really love. What do I love about content marketing? I think that it's ever changing and amorphous, not unlike the dark arts from Harry Potter, but there's always something new. There's no such thing as a bad idea, just perhaps poorly executed and or not put in front of the right audience, which I think is true of any industry. But there's no end to the creativity and the balance that you can do if you have a little bit of chutzpah and a real desire to reach audiences on a personal level.
I love it. Well, Ben, one interesting thing when we were talking before is you had this big passion for the entertainment industry, and you decided at one point in time in your career that you wanted to make this shift. And yep. I love the story of what you did and how you really got into the industry as a whole. The approach that you took, I think it's a great lesson for life and marketing. But do you mind sharing a little bit of that story?
Yeah, I love it. So like I mentioned, I'm originally from Canada, but ever since I was a teenager, I've always loved entertainment in all forms, and just really wanted to work and live in Los Angeles, and particularly in the entertainment space. But it's not terribly easy for folks from Canada, where I'm from, to make that move. And I went to school, I studied marketing, and then kind of fell into a number of different careers, brand management, campaign management, product development. And it just got to a point where I was getting frustrated because I wasn't following my passion. And I do think a learning there is, it's great to have a backup career, but don't let the backup become your main career. And that's kind of what I did. So about 6 years ago, I decided to make the move. I was living in Toronto, so I emailed 1,500 marketing execs in Hollywood, and I can't believe there's that many, and drove down, I think it was about 3,000 miles from Toronto, and had about 450 meetings over the course of 3.5 months. And it was just learning from people, understanding how to position myself as a brand to break into an industry that is actually notoriously difficult to break into, especially when you're further on in your career. But I managed to do it, and I networked my way into a role as a director of brand development and marketing, building streaming platforms in the sports and entertainment space. And yeah, and from there, my career's evolved. I've done some work with Apple TV Plus. I worked with Paramount in their partnership marketing business. And then most recently, I'm now at Amazon going on 2 years. And there I've worked across their TV, film, and now podcasting divisions. But I think what you and I had talked about was just having tenacity, not taking no for an answer. But if you really are passionate about something, you can make it happen. It just takes a lot of work and a lot of patience. And like I said, getting shut down, but not letting that get in your way. Like I say to my friends, you need to be a little bit delusional, which I think is a good life lesson for everybody, right? Someone says no or is rude to you, I didn't want to work with them in the first place. And move on to the next. You take the lesson and use that to carve your own path.
I love every part of that story. Like you said, just this pure desire and understanding of where you wanted to go, and just the relentless nature of how you got there, and really the time-consuming nature if you look at all those meetings and emails, but really just the full commitment. I love the quote of, sometimes it takes a lot to burn the ships.
Yeah.
And really be all in. You don't want to burn bridges. You want to burn ships. I don't know why those analogies both come to mind at the same time, but it's interesting, and I love any kind of story about that. So, Ben, what we're really going to focus on is the entertainment industry, how that applies to marketing and content, things of that nature. One of the first things that comes to mind when I think about the entertainment industry is the fact that your content is the product. So many people listening to today's podcast, they're using content as a means to getting people interested in the product, which is usually a software, a service, whatever it may be. But it's different when you actually are selling content and doing that. What's different with the quality of content and the kinds of content in the entertainment industry? And maybe what are some lessons people can kind of learn when the content is the product, not just the advertising?
Yeah, entertainment is an interesting beast in that the story is king, the story is the product. So like you said, you're content marketing content, but you're also not necessarily as in control of the message, because that message has been set out by the filmmaker, the podcast creator, the writer. And now you have to find the most compelling angle to promote that to the right audience in a way that hits them on a personal level. And, sometimes I'll just call a spade. It can be a little bit of putting lipstick on a pig, where you're like, all right, I've been given this title. We call them titles, or this, show, movie, whatever. And now I have to figure out the best way to market it. Some people do an exceptional job of putting lipstick on a pig, to be honest. I mean, there have been quite a few films where you're left scratching your head about how it was a success because the content itself was not terribly compelling, in my humble opinion. But the unique angle, be it a sense of humor, a unique partnership, or some sort of creative marketing idea, has kind of let it live in a new way and in a different way. That's kind of the big takeaway for me from transitioning over to working in industries where I was creating products from inception through to putting in the market, where I had my hand on everything. Here you are really coming in at the end and you're marketing somebody else's vision, which is a unique challenge. But I think, like any other business, you have to kind of take a step back. And like you said, you are really marketing a product. It's, you need to understand what the single-minded benefit is, of that story. You need to be able to pitch it to, in this case, it can be executive producers, it can be showrunners rather, and get their buy-in on the angle that you're going in while still being respectful to their brand and the product that they're putting out. And then you have to have a really, really deep and personal understanding of the audience. Or in the case of a business, a customer, why will the story resonate with them? What is that single-minded benefit, or what we call the key hook, that they are going to gravitate towards and should really be part of every single marketing message that goes out? And then understanding where, when, and how they are engaging and searching for this type of content so you can put it in front of them in the most meaningful way. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, entertainment is this big, strange business that has its own approaches and guides and whatnot. But it really is a business at the end of the day, which I know Disney would kill me, but I'm taking all the magic out of movies. And that's really how we think of it. And there are a lot of parallels there.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about segmentation and knowing your audience really, really well. You actually have a really cool story of an example of knowing your audience really, really well. And this came before your entertainment days when you were at Starbucks in Canada. Do you mind telling that? Because I think this is such a prime example of what you just talked about, of how good you got to know an audience and how that was able to make an impact. Do you mind sharing some of that? Obviously, don't share any details you can't share, but would love to hear the story. I think it's an amazing example of how marketing should be done.
Canada, I believe, has like the highest per capita consumption of coffee in the world or something crazy like that. So we love our coffee and are very strongly opinionated about it. So, I was a big fan of Starbucks. I joined the company, God, I'm dating myself, back in 2009. At the time, Starbucks was number 4 in the market. And anybody familiar with Canada will know Tim Hortons is our iconic coffee brand. And the challenge that, we were having was, how do we unseat the leader? And how do we become a beloved brand amongst Canadians? And we took a step back. A lot of companies were like, put out a brand and slap maple syrup in it, or put a maple leaf on it. And we knew that wasn't really going to be enough, because it had been tried before by many brands, and not just in Canada, but around the world. The cost of the backlash is not worth, the effort. So we really did take our time to, talk with our customers, both through research, but also, we had the benefit of having stores. So talking to them in store and kind of listening to our most loyal fans about what they love about Starbucks coffee, but then also talking to non-Starbucks fans about not just coffee itself, but their perception of American brands trying to come into the country. And our big aha moment was when we were told by Canadians that they don't like being told by American companies what Canadians like. And I can attest to that. But when you're living in it, you don't always think that way. And it was like, oh yeah, that's true. It is part of our culture. So what we took away from that is that it wasn't important to kind of convince Canadians why Starbucks was better, but rather give them a choice and help them understand why Canadians who love Starbucks right now love it so much, with a message that was kind of like, if you know, you know, to pull that from 2024 verbiage. And really what our entire campaign about was giving Canadians a voice in the future of the Starbucks brand and in the Canadian coffee journey. So our entire campaign, which was called Name Your Blend Canada, was about opening up the brand and marketing floodgates for the first time in Starbucks history, and giving Canadians the opportunity not only to choose a name for, a uniquely Canadian blend, which was a much lighter roast. It very much matched the profile in many ways of some of the most popular coffees from Tim Hortons and other popular Canadian brands, but then also using that opportunity to learn and get content from our customers and potential customers about what they love about coffee, why Starbucks coffee is such an important part of their day, and from their own mouths, why everybody should be flocking to Starbucks. So we built out a campaign, and this, by the way, was when Facebook was just starting to do marketing. Meta was not even a twinkle in anybody's eye. And so we launched, a digital campaign with print. I know a lot of listeners will be like, what's print? It's a newspaper and magazines, but also using Facebook to engage existing and potential customers and get them to submit content as well as their ideas for naming the coffee. We were able to collect about 18,000 pieces of content, which we then spun out into a full 360 campaign. And the net is that we launched a new coffee called True North Blend. It is still the number 1 coffee, I believe, being sold by Starbucks in Canada. But the even bigger impact was that we were able to drive the business past $1 billion for the first time. And Starbucks rocketed it up, I believe, into the number 2 space, which it has since continued to erode market share from, Tim Hortons and other brands. And for me, it was eye-opening on a number of fronts. First of all, really understanding your customer on a personal level, and then spinning that out in a way that says, we're listening to you and we understand the emotional need that a coffee company or a brand of any type can serve. And we want you to be a part of telling our story, of being storytellers with us versus us telling you what your story is.
I'm such a big fan of that story. I think it's so impactful. Now, I have one follow-up question to that story that I think is really important. You mentioned once we got the insight that Canadians didn't want to be told by Americans and American brands what to buy and why they should buy it. How did you get those insights? How did you go about collecting that, getting to know your consumer so well that those kind of ideas started to bubble up and unsurface and give you some of these kind of ideas so that you could launch such a, big and impactful campaign?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I know a lot of people are like, oh, we don't have the deep pockets like a Starbucks has but like the secret, and I'll talk about this a little later as well, is that not all companies have as big pockets as you think they do, especially not in a foreign market. So what I love to do, and what has always been a big part of my job, is finding ways to stretch budgets or make something happen where nothing exists to begin with. So yes, we did do some research to reach non-Starbucks customers, as we called them, because that's the only way you could do it. And that was a mix of quantitative and qualitative studies. But the even bigger part was actually leaning into our employees who worked on, at the front in stores, and having them help us collect data from customers. So asking questions. Starbucks has a very passionate workforce, I don't work for them anymore, but in the sales team, who, really want to make a better experience for their customers, old and new. And that became a really important resource for us, being able to draw on that, which costs us nothing. So even when it comes to research, and we talk about being creative in content marketing, there's always a creative way to get the information you need. It can be talking to the employees in your company, talking to, adding a question at the end of, a checkout process, sending out emails, going to an event and just talking with people. It may not always be statistically relevant if we're going to go like purely technical, but at least it's something, and at least it's something to go from versus just making it up in your head.
This conversation is actually a two-parter, so stick around for tomorrow's episode to come out and hear the rest of the conversation. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.